Hey y'all, thanks for watching that first one. If you haven't watched it though, you can go back and take another look at it. These stories, I'm telling you, they're true and they're real, and they're from my adventures out in the wild. And the Lord has allowed me to do some pretty wild, crazy things out there. And I've hunted just about everything there is to hunt, and I enjoy it all. I love to outsmart a big buck's nose and shoot him with a bow. Or I love, love bass fishing or calling in a turkey. But my favorite thing that I've never gotten away from, and that is using dogs to hunt. And there's nothing quite like showing up to a place and going and catching a big old boar hog against his will. And he's in a terrible mood when we get him caught. So the stories that I'm telling you, they didn't take place in the comfort of a deer stand or near a road. There were trails somewhat nearby. It wasn't in the best of scenario. There was no cell phone service. In this particular one, I'm going to tell you another story about the mountains. And there was two things that happened this day. I look back on my phone, and the date was December 3rd when this happened. And there were a couple of big boars making their way in this circle. And some of my friends on a place about 4,000 or 5,000 acres were getting their picture just every few days. And there's not a lot of hogs up in this part of Arkansas where I was at. And so this boar was making a huge circle, some 4 or 5 mile circle. And so finding where he was going to be on a certain day to get him proved to be tough. But this one particular day on December 3rd, I was all by myself, and I loaded up my dogs and I headed out to this spot. I had a few bay dogs with me. So I didn't take everything because this place that it's hard to get into, and I was walking by myself. So I only took about 8 bay dogs with me, and I took 2 Dogos. So I only had 10. That wasn't that many. So we go down to where this hog had been hanging out, and I turned the bay dogs loose, and I'm waiting for them to strike, waiting for them to bay. And on the side of the mountain, there was this bluff. This was not anything near like the other bluff that I told you about in the previous episode, but it was only about a 12 or 15 foot drop behind it. But there again, it was straight down, way, way down in the valley. Well, this hog was laying in a little thicket. It was some briars on the edge of this rock. And I had a couple of dogs go in there and find him and bay him. So this is back. Tai was just a baby. He was a puppy coming on and doing good. He was less than a year old. And I had this female named Buseka with me. Buseka was a great dog, straight from La Cocha. I got her as a puppy. And when she started going in this thicket, she was trying to get a hold of this boar. She couldn't really get a good hold. The briars were thick. I'm not sure what happened, if she missed or she couldn't quite get to him. But anyway, the hog and the Dogo wind up take off running, and they are running right to the edge of this levee, the ledge where the rock goes down. And I was running up there to see what was going to happen. And right when I get there to the edge, where I can see the edge, Buseka and this boar, she's running right beside him trying to catch his ear, and they both fly just Superman off of this rock ledge. And as they're going down, of course, it's only 12 feet to the ground, but if you jump 15 feet that way, then it's a lot longer down. And I don't know anything about geometry or trig or whatever version of math you'd need to know to figure out how far they went. But as they're going down in the air, they smash into this huge dead tree. This dead tree has been there for many, many years, and they hit this tree. It's about this big around. And when they hit this tree, then the tree falls down. And then it's like the hog and the dog are just wrecked, and then they're falling, and then this tree is falling. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what now? And the tree, boom, hits the ground, and I hear Buseka and whimper, and I was like, oh my gosh, my dog is dead. That tree has killed her. Well, I'm struggling to get to the edge of this rock, and I've got bay dogs that are jumping down over here, jumping down. The hog is running. They're just they're all in. They're flying off, jumping off this ledge. Some of them are running around. I think, like I said, I think I had 8. I can go back and watch the video. But all the bay dogs go down there. The hog gets up. The hog takes off flying, and I'm standing on the edge of this rock, and the bay dogs are just rolling. They're gone with him. I look down there, and that tree is on top of Buseka. She had whined a couple of times, probably knocked the breath out of her. I didn't know what happened, but I thought she was gone. So I frantically found a way down, and I rushed down there to her. And to my surprise, when I saw her, she was still alive. And the providence of the Lord just happened. There was a little indention right there, not much of one, but she was laying in that little indention, and that tree had tons of pressure on her, but it was just enough where it didn't totally end her life. So when I got down there, I heard over in the distance on down in the valley, I could hear my bay dogs, woo, 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 woo. They had that hog stopped, and he was back underneath this big rock, and I was thinking, okay, the boar's caught, and Ty's just little. He's just a puppy. He's going on that way. And I said, my dog is at least got a broken shoulder, busted rib cage, damaged organs, concussion. I can't believe she's alive. And so I start to try to move this tree. And, you know, I'm not the biggest guy in the world. I'm also not the smallest guy. But have you ever had one of those instances where you just get a ton of adrenaline and you can move something you're not supposed to do? Well, it was just me and those 10 dogs out in the woods. And so I squat down and I pick up the end of this tree, and I tried to use as best form as I could, back straight, butt down, head up, and here I go. And I'm trying to lift this tree. And I started to lift the first time, and I realized how heavy it was. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, I don't know if I can do this or not, but I'm about to strain my liver out to try to move this tree for my dog. Well, by the grace of God, I began to squat, and I lifted this tree about 1 inch. And folks, I lifted this tree about 1 inch, and when I did, Buseka tore out of there like she was shot out of a gun, flying down this draw. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I was like, oh my gosh, not only is she alive, we're about to finish this. So I took off sprinting behind her, and it was about, I don't know, maybe 100, 150 yards down the side of the mountain. And for all you boys that are hunting over in Virginia and the Carolinas and all that, you know what it's like running on the side of those steep mountains. It's dangerous, slipping and falling. Another big rock ledge. The boar was up underneath it and had its nose sticking out. I got there just in time to see Buseka goes in this cave, wham, locks up. Out comes the hog. I grab him, dispatch him. Unbelievable boar. Big old cutters. I got a video. I'm sending it to Argentina of Ulises. It's like, you're never going to believe this. No puedo creer esto. Es un chancho grande. And I was talking about Buseka. And I've got that video I might share with you some of these times. And so I was worried about Buseka. And so evidently there was a sow with this boar that I never saw. Bay dogs, they're gone. Boom, they're gone. Well, I go back to the buggy. And so I put the Dogos up, and I get Buseka unvested. And I'm looking at her, and I'm moving her front shoulders around, and she's starting to get sore, rightly so. And so I'm checking for broken bones. I'm checking for broken anything. And about that time, my Garmin starts beeping, and it's saying that the bay dogs, they've got another one. They're bayed, and they're up on top. By this time, I had made it all the way down at the bottom of the ravine. And to get to where the dogs were at, I'm going to have to climb a sheer bluff and then walk to them, or drive my buggy around and get on the highway. And you know what it's like to go around these ravines. It's not easy. It's going to take about an hour to go around there just to get to where the dog's at, and they're only like 300 yards away. So I thought about it for a minute, and I was going to have to climb this rock wall. It was about, I don't know, maybe 60 or 80 feet of rock, and then a couple of 100 feet to get to the rest of the top, where I could hear, because I wanted to listen to my dogs bay. I love that sound. So as I think about what I'm going to do, I leave Buseka snapped because I want to make sure that she's okay before I use her anymore. And I said, I tell you what, girls, boys and girls, I said, before we drive around there, I said, let me go up there and just listen. You know, I'm talking to the dogs. There's nobody else there but us and the Lord. And so I take off my vest and I take off my knife and I take off everything that's weighing me down because I'm about to climb up and just listen. So I take off all my weapons and I start up this bluff, and I scaled this rock bluff, made it all the way to the top finally, and I'm give out. And I look, and on my garments, sure enough, they've got a hog bayed. And so I'm just sitting there listening to them, and all of a sudden they break, and they're running right at me. And I can hear my dogs, and I'm like, now, why are they running right to me? I wasn't calling them. I wasn't blowing my foxhorn. I wasn't anything. They're getting closer and closer, and they're running right at me. And I'm on the edge of this levee, kind of like I was telling you in episode 1. I'm on the edge of one of those. And I'm standing there, and all of a sudden, coming down through the woods, here comes a young gilt. That's a sow that's never had piglets before. And she was about that tall and weighed about 100 pounds. And she's flying, and she's running right at me. And I feel like I'm on a rabbit hunt with beagles when I was a kid. And I was like, well, now what? This hog is running right at me. And why? Why is it break? Why did it break and it's running right at me? It's coming down the trail, and I'm standing on the edge of this bluff, and there's a little crag right here beside me. And I had 8 bay dogs that just had the woods are open, and they were gaining on it. They had the throttle laid back. This thing runs down. It's no further than 20 yards from me, goes down in this crag, goes about 20 foot down, and goes up in a cave and disappears. And this cave is like, 20 feet back in there. And I was like, okay, now what? So then all my dogs pile off down there, and I mean, they're getting in this hole, and they're baying in this hole. And a lot of the guys will, treat bears in these old dens up in and I watch you guys, and I love watching y'all shows out in the eastern part of the world, the southeast, where y'all are baying these, and baying and treeing these bears in these dens. So it looked a lot like that. Well, I look way down at the bottom. There's my buggy. There's my Dogos. There's my knives. There's all of my weapons, and it's way too far down. I mean, it's not like, hey, I'll be right back. Let me go get all that stuff and I'll be right back. It's like, I can't go 1,000 feet to the bottom of this thing. Or maybe 800. My buggy was at the bottom, and I'd started up about halfway. So I didn't climb those bluff walls about, a couple hundred feet, but where my buggy was parked, I had walked several hundred feet up the mountain. That's kind of to get the math all in your head there. So I was like, I'm give out. I can't go down there and back up and do all this. I'm just not going to do it. I got to figure this out. Well, I had no weapons. So I turned the flashlight on my phone, and I'm looking in that cave, and that hog is in there, and it's charging me. And it charged me a couple times and made me mad. And I said, how am I going to dispatch this hog? And I got to looking around, and over laying up against the edge of this bluff wall was this old dead cedar tree, red heart cedar. And in this part of the world, my grandpa and everybody used those cedar trees as fence posts. I mean, they stay good and hard on the inside for 50, 60, 70 years sometimes. And so I said, if I can bust that cedar tree and splinter it like I know it'll do, I was like, I can fashion myself a new knife, and I can have a new knife made maybe before I can go down there and back. That was my thought process. So I hit the side of the cave that this hog was in. And of course, the bay dogs, they're just going crazy. They're just baying up a storm. And I said, that's going to work. So I reared back and swung as hard as I could. And when I did, that cedar tree busted into 1,000 pieces, and one shard of that came off and hit me in between my eyes, cuts it like a ½ inch right in between my eyes. And so that's the first thing that happened. And all of you out there that know if you've ever seen a boxing match or a wrestling match, if you get cut on your forehead, it's not a bad cut, but it bleeds like crazy. So now I have got blood pouring down all over my face. And I don't even know, I've got to look like a wild man. And I'm fashioning this knife. Well, I knew that a hog's hide is really, really tough. And so I picked up a shard that broken off, and it was about this long. And it was kind of dull on one end, and I rubbed it on that rock for about 20 seconds, and I kind of whittled it down, and then I found the very sharpest, teeny tiny shard. It was about 4 inches long, and you guys know the kind that I'm talking about when you're in the wood shop and you get it and it's the best toothpick you've ever had. I picked up that big one, and I had it in my hand, and I put that toothpick, about 4-inch piece, right here in my mouth. I put that stick in my back pocket, and I started in that cave to get this hog. Well, this hog sees me, and as you know, the hog charges me. And of course, my bay dogs got very aggressive when I was in there on my hands and knees. That's not something they'd ever seen, and they helped me catch it. So the hog charged me, and I grabbed it by the ear. A couple of my bay dogs that could fit in beside me grabbed its snout, and here we're coming out with it. I'm crawling backwards, and I'm coming out with it. I got it out in the daylight, and I flipped it over, and I put my knee right there on its neck, and I had its leg pulled up, and I had my big spear in my back pocket, and I took that big old toothpick that I had, and I raised its arm up where that softest spot was, and I punctured it, and I got a hole started, and as soon as I got that hole started, I drove that right through its heart, just about that quick. Killed it graveyard dead. And when that hog, it was as clean of a kill as I've ever made in my life. And lots of people say, you know, hunting with knives and things like this, it's brutal, it's barbaric. Well, I'm going to tell you something. When you shoot a deer and it runs off and you're waiting for it to die, that's because it's not dead yet. When you gut shoot something, when you shoot something and it's flopping around, but when you put something through the heart, it's over instantly. And if that bothered some of you all that are out there listening, I apologize. But I dispatched this hog very quickly. I had blood running all over my face. And I called my wife, and she's like, what in the world? Wait, I don't even know. Just come home. I don't even want to know. Just come home. So I come home, and I said I wasn't going to get my face stitched up. And we wound up going to my buddy's house. That's the doctor. And he stitched it all up, so you can still see the scar right there. But that's the day that the tree fell on Buseka. And I crawled in that cave and got the hog out, fashioned a weapon, and killed it. Total, I would say traditional, Native American. I don't know what you'd call that. But that's what I did. But when there's a will, there's a way. And how bad do you want it? And I think of Buseka when she got out from underneath that tree. How bad do you want it? We got to want things that bad in our life in order to succeed. And these dogs are just incredible when it comes to pleasing their masters and staying focused on their job. The whole time she was laying underneath that tree, she was focused on going and getting that hog and finish the job. And I think as Christians, if we will stay focused on Christ about half as hard as she is focused on that hog that day, I think we'll all be better for it. Until next time, you all, happy hunting, and may God bless you.